All right, we got a big Fuzion in here. All right, we got it all staged up right now. Now we can go to work on it. So we're gonna go up there and take a look at this roof. It's your typical RV roof. You've all seen them. All right, here's what you got. Put more on, more on. They just slobber. You can tell someone already had to put some more on here. So underneath here, just these little plates. And I don't even barely see one right here. You can see the couple of screws there. But that's how they support it down. But just from moving around and everything, they tend to fracture out and then you get leaks in there. We'll be putting a boot around there, so that'll solve that problem. So you can see all that residue right there. That's because that looks like that shoulder is coming up. Well, you can see it right there as I press down. So a lot of times they don't have enough staples, and they don't glue them down anyways. They usually just throw them on here and throw a couple of staples on these things. But that's what the RV industry wants you to keep coming up here and putting more of this self-leveling on here, and they exploit people's ignorance to roof systems. That's what it comes down to. If it says RV, the product says RV on it, don't buy it. You can use a commercial grade lap sealant if you want, and probably have better results. You know, they do make it for other membranes, and you can get some of that either online, or you could go to your local supply house and say, hey, I'm looking for some lap sealant for, you know. So you can see all those staples come right out. Okay, don't even have to work too hard for that. When we put these down, I'm going to glue them down. I'll still staple them, but I'm going to glue them down, make sure they stay in place, you know. And I'm hoping to salvage these, so I don't want to have to rebuild them. So this right here, that is a vent. Well, it's not a vent, put it that way. They call it a vent, but there's nothing to vent out. So what it really is an access point in case you really want to run some wires or something up underneath. Say you want to run whatever, maybe a solar or something. That's typically why they put them in there. But they don't vent anything. It doesn't work. It won't work as a vent. In order for it to work as a vent, you'd have to have a draw down here, which would draw it up so you have a cycle of air. If you don't have that and it's blocked, you're not going to get the flow like you want. So, but I know Owens Corning, they have a whole video on YouTube about ventilation and how it works. But it's very similar, like on your house, if you have the ridge up on the top here, and then you have the eave down the bottom, you'll have that ridge vent up at the top, and then you go down to the bottom where the gutter is, that soffit you'll see, and it channels up and goes right up through the rafters. You have to have that kind of flow for it to really work. So somebody thought it'd be smart to just seal all that in there, which that isn't a smart idea. So because water that gets in there can't get out, you don't really want to do all that nonsense. So we'll be taking those boots off there, or that plastic piece. And what I don't like about these as well is, one, they're slobbered with self-leveling. That's the way they want to do everything, just put self-leveling on it. That's the way they, you know, industry, they call that an industry standard. Pretty low standard, pretty low standard. But if you were to get online, you can do a search for commercial roof images, and you will see the air conditioners, you'll see the vents, you'll see these things like that, skylights like the one down there. You're going to see all those elevated up off on the roof line on a box. They call those box curbs. They don't make curbs for RVs, but I do. So I fabricate everything, and that's how you do it. But that's a proper way to do it. When you see the curbs, they'll have flashing and counter flashing on it. And you'll see when we get them together, unless you've already watched some of my other videos, you know what I'm talking about. But we've got some residue on here. I don't know if that's just the ink coming off, but that's all these are, just ink. So we get all that. I don't know how the stitching is. Seems okay right here. So, but there's another one of those so-called vents. They're not vents at all. So we've got obviously some issues up here. And right up underneath the air conditioner is just a foam gasket. Those gaskets, they say, should be changed every couple of years. But all it takes is to have a chronic leak in there, which will rot out the decking. And when it rots out the decking, then the water just gets all inside there. And now the air conditioner starts to drop. So obviously we'll have these up on curves as well, and we won't have that issue. But I'm going to check, make sure the framing is okay when we do this. You can see someone, probably the owner, tried to put something up on there just to stave it off. He said he had a couple of leaks. But when he brought it in, we have another building that when coaches come in, if they're really bad and we cannot stop, you know, keep it outside. If it has a hole in it, if it's something we can't prevent or stop that leak and don't feel comfortable with it sitting outside, then we'll put it in our dry storage building. No other company does that I know of that offers dry storage. So we do a lot of stuff that you're not going to find anywhere else. We're going to take the OSB off, we're going to put plywood on, but we're also going to check the trunk lines, we're going to check the electrical, so all the insulation comes out. Again, if you've seen my other videos, you know what I'm talking about. And then we'll end up gluing the deck down, and we'll refasten the deck down. You know, I don't know if it's got wooden trusses or aluminum in this one right off the top of my head, I mean, until I open it up. But you know, you're not going to find that kind of work at any place else. What they want to do is strip it off, put another roof on, put it down the same exact way. They're not going to have curbs. Anybody who tells you they do, I've never trained anybody to do my roof systems yet. So, you know, just keep that in mind. But nobody else does a system like we do. And the shame about it is these places are ripping you off for what it costs to have a roof put on. You know, we're competitive priced with them. You know, we really are. And it's a shame when I look at it and I go, wow, someone had to pay that much money because they didn't know. So I try to do these videos to get information out to, you know, folks. But really, the whole scope of the video is really for the customer, so they're not really intended as a DIY video. But it just showed people, hey, this is what you need to look for and so forth. If you have your own coach, maybe I'm pointing out something that you can go around and, you know, check on your own coach so it doesn't turn into a hot mess. But again, like I said, the gaskets under there, you really should be changing them every couple of years, they say. But since now when we put this up on a curb, it's not going to have an issue with it. It's done. So. And also we're going to upgrade the roofing to a 60 mil commercial grade roof. And you'll see all this when it comes together. So give us a chance to get this apart and we'll show you some more. We've got the decking up. Obviously got to get these staples out. So this is just basically a sound deadener is what they use. This doesn't do anything. So we got one more piece up underneath here. This is all rotted out. This one, it's still wet. And over there, on that other side. So sometimes they'll put this down and they think it's going to reflect UV light, but it won't reflect UV light unless there's a cavity, like a gap. Stay there. Like a cavity like that. It has to have about 3/4 of an inch. And you can go on YouTube and you can watch a couple of videos on Tech Shield, LP Tech Shield, and they explain how the whole theory of it works. But in this application, it doesn't do anything. They do make a radiant barrier sheathing, you know, like that. That's what LP Tech is. And they'll have the sheathing, and then on the other side, they'll have the aluminum laminated to it, you know, glued onto it. But like I said, you got to have a cavity there for it to be effective. If you're just going to do this, it doesn't seem to work well. But it's not going to matter with our roof because the roof systems that we use are all commercial grade, so they reflect UV light. You don't really need to put that down. So then we're going to be looking for wires and we're going to be looking for trunk lines. So we're going to check out all the insulation. And we just want to see what's going on. Like these wires are going down through here, which is good. It's not a ferrule, but I want to make sure that wherever else this, especially the 120 lines, wherever they go, I'll make sure they're not rubbing on anything sharp. You know, this is a piece of plastic. I want to make sure it's not going to get compromised. So that's what we're looking for. Then we're going to look for, you know, make sure all the trusses are okay. If they're split, broke, whatever, we want to find that out. So you can see, like, we got a staple here. They had a couple of staples in here. Obviously no glue. You need to have glue on here. These things rack, twist, and flex a lot. That said, all that energy has got to go somewhere and generally goes into the fasteners. And I showed you that the shoulder is already, you know, not secured down well. So the glue will act as a buffer in a sense to absorb some of that energy, some of that shock, and help keep things from racking too far out of shape for sure. So like I said, that's where we're at now. We'll clean it all up and get some decking on here. And well, let's see what's up underneath it once we get all the insulation out. But we may end up putting in more insulation on this. This is kind of thin. This is just 1.5. So yeah, we're probably going to put more insulation in this thing. That's for sure. Yeah. That's just really thin. So we'll load it up, get it all packed in there. He came all the way down from Virginia with this coach, so I'm sure it gets a little cooler up there than it does down here in our part of the world. So, all right, well, once we get this up, we'll come back with the camera and show you. Welcome back to the Fuzion. So, cleaned up all the trusses. And then what we did is inspected all the wires like these. And these are ferrules. That's so you don't put a screw from the awning gutter rail through that. That's the whole idea to it. That's why the ferrule is there. So you don't pinch wire, right? But inside this, like I showed before, is really sharp. But this is just a little bushing. So we go around and check all that. It's just a little bushing. It's real simple. You can actually find those at Home Depot. This isn't necessarily a DIY channel, but you can get them at Home Depot. They're just little red bushings. They're usually used them for what's called BX cable. And BX is a metal sheathing cable that, but it's flexible. So you'll see it in there. It's real flexible, but it just has a metal wrap around it. So that's what it's used for. It's actually electrical code. All right, so then we went around and we put these little plates. Then we tape the plates on there. We tape the plates on there, and then obviously tape the wires down so they don't jostle around and rub into the ductwork. Then taped up everything, so we got the whole roll of tape right there. So do the same over here. Make sure everything's cleared away from the trusses. That's important. Sometimes they just slop them all around. We don't want to pinch them as we're putting a new deck down. So we got the whole thing done. And then see if there's any other ones. This is going to be for the ductwork for the skylight. So it goes through here. There'll be a fan right over here, and then we're going to have another one over here for the intake. If you've seen some of my other videos, you know what I'm talking about. That's how we do them. So when you have your inner skylight will come up about here. And then the other skylight's sitting on top of the roof. So you have this cavity right in here. Well, there's no air that ever gets in there. On the skylight itself, especially now with it getting cold out, you'll have maybe some frost on the top. Then the sun will come up and it'll evaporate that off of the skylight. Well, what's up underneath is got frost on it as well. The whole thing is get condensation, right? Or frost or dew. So now as the sun heats that, basically heats the skylight up to evaporate that off, what's on the inside here, it's not going to evaporate off. And what it does, it drools down. It'll get down into the decking. It'll get down into, you could get into the framing depending on how bad it is. But so what I did is I designed there'll be a solar fan over here. So now when the sun comes up, there'll be another one of these ductworks. We've got to put it over here, and it'll draw some air. It'll go up, over, come down, and then there's going to be like you said, a fan right here. So like, if you've seen some of my other ones, you know what I'm talking about. But you'll see at the end of this video. How's that sound? All right. So we got everything else, like you said, all checked up, checked over. And then we're going to be putting in some more insulation. That's what he wanted. That's just, I like the blown-in insulation for this application because I can get some insulation up underneath that ductwork. So now you can keep all that cold air moving right down the ductwork where it needs to go, instead of just, you know, just to me it just seems more efficient. How's that? All right, so I think we're about ready to get our insulation in. So to clean up some of this stuff, we'll get rid of all this trash. And then we will put the insulation in, then we'll put the decking on. Well, we got the insulation in. What we did is just put it up underneath here. We're going to put that on top. That's what we're going to do. So we tucked it up underneath all the ductwork and everything else. So that's what we're doing, just fitting some of this in. I like this on top because when we go to glue this, sometimes your little squirrelies get up here when we got glue, and then I'm going to try and keep them down so they don't make any lumps or anything. Well, we're getting the decking on. Get a lot of glue. You want to make sure these are glued down. Real important. That's what we're doing. Gluing it. Not only do we glue it down here, we glue it to this other piece. They're all glued and tight. You want to staple these down. You don't want to use screws. You'll split those trusses. So. All right, back to our Fuzion. We've already got the driver's side. We've got it already glued down. So you can see all the glue we got here. So we're going to roll this over. We got all our buffer strips in here. Then we're going to be pulling the roof over. And when we pull the roof over, we'll end up, we should be able to get a gutter on the back side of this one. I like to do that on all of them, but what determines that is like some of these lights, they're up too high. And then I would have to try to move them, and even if I moved one down, I have to move them all down. That just gets to be a pain in the butt, and really something I don't need to be poking a bear on that. So other than that, we're ready to rock and roll and get this thing rolled over. We salvaged the old shoulders, and pulling those staples out in the beginning of the video, you saw how those things were just really loose. We pulled them out, but there was still some burrs, and I didn't want them just looking unsightly. They probably wouldn't have an effect on how thick this material is. It really takes a lot to puncture it. But even that said, I just like it to look as clean as possible, so we threw this strip down here. And then, like I said, we'll end up rolling this over. You can see how yellow that glue is. That's not supposed to be yellow, it's supposed to be gold, and it'll turn gold. That's what's called flashing off. And then this is a contact cement. Other shops don't do that. They just glue one side and they roll the roofing over, and that's why you see them blow off the roof, you know, and start coming loose. This is a contact cement. This stuff, it's not coming up. I know one of my subscribers who wanted me to show how tough it was to pull up, and I'm trying to figure a way to do that. But I'm telling you, this stuff, when it's down, it's stuck like Chuck. It's there. So we're going to, like I said, once this flashes off, we'll roll it. Then we cut all the holes out and get the roof assembled. All right, we are done. December of 23. We have got her done. So now what we're doing is just clean the roof up and everything. So, and it's real easy to clean this roof. That's all we're using is just that little mop, and this is just a Mr. Clean. You can come up here with some soap and water, and you can wash it down with that. You can pressure wash it if you want. So, but I want to start out by thanking the customer for bringing this to us. He had quite a travel to come down here. He was all the way up in Virginia. So it was a little bit of a travel, so we appreciate the work. But we got everything all squared away. You can see, and all the components, I make all these here. We fabricate everything. All these boots, all the curbs. We don't sell anything. We don't sell one thing in the shop at all. And we don't sell the curves. We don't sell any of that. So, and these aren't necessarily DIY videos. If you get something out of it, great. But there's a lot of stuff we do behind the scenes that I just don't video. It would just take too long on the video. Also, we do not quote on social media. So if you got any questions, just give us a call. There should be a card on the video. And I think that's about it on that anyways. So you obviously saw how this all got put together so far. Then we glued the roof down, got the curbs all welded in. So these are all welded. This is all heat welded. This is called TPO. TPO means thermoplastic. It's all heat welded in. There's no caulking. We changed the gasket on these air conditioners, but you can see we got a couple of stands in the back, and that just gives us some balance. If you were to go online and do an image search for commercial roofs, commercial flat roof, and then images, you're going to see the air conditioner, you're going to see the vents, you're going to see those things elevated up off the roof line on a box like that, but basically they're called curbs. So those curbs, they have flashing and counter flashing, and the flashing is the part that sits on the roof that we heat weld in, and then up underneath is, or on the top of the curb, is what's called counter flash, which is basically another little fin that comes out. And so when the water is racing across the roof, whether it's a heavy storm that you're driving through or one that just, you know, is pushing pretty hard, it will try to ride up the curb, but it can't jump the curb, so it goes around it. That's the way commercial roofs are designed. And all of these have counter flashing on them. You probably barely see it. See if I can get the camera in there. That little fin right there. You can see how it overhangs. So when the water is coming down the air conditioner, like I said, there's a foam gasket up underneath there. I want to protect that. I don't want water to trickle back to come down here and then trickle up underneath. So this other piece out front, that's another piece of counter flash that goes up under the cover here, and it goes below the counter flash on the curb. So all that water keeps getting pushed down and away from where it may potentially leak. So all of these, again, they're all heat welded in here. So we've got, this is a 60 mil commercial grade TPO. This is much better than what you're ever going to get on an RV. This is literally a real commercial roof system. I buy them at commercial roof warehouses. My background is commercial roofs, structurality. I was a general contractor for years. All that said, this is the same product. Now, on a commercial level, it starts off at 45 mil. This is 60, so we even upgraded it yet one more time. So not only do we upgrade you from an RV roof to a commercial roof, we upgraded it from the entry-level commercial roof up one level. So this membrane is what's known as a reinforced or structured, and what that means is in the actual material itself, it has a mesh in there. Let's see if we can show you on some of these. Maybe you'll see. I'm trying to get a piece in my hand. There you go. I don't know if you can see the little squares in there, but the little squares, basically there's just like a screen or a mesh in there, and that's what gives it some strength to resist against like hail, tree branches, and things like that. So if you did get a tree branch to come through, we do leave folks with a care package, and then they can do an emergency patch. If they bring it back to us, we'll do a hot patch on it. And what a hot patch is basically we'll heat weld another piece over it, so you don't have to go and replace the whole entire roof like you would on an RV roof, because all they do is just do a peel and stick on there, and that's really not a long-term fix for an RV roof because the material is just so bad. It's not going to have any longevity to it. They get you by a little while, but the longevity won't be there. So the same thing with the plumbing. We heat welded all those, made all those boots. So if that cap pops off, the only place that water's going is down into the holding tank. So we see we got a couple more over here. Now, we don't screw the skylights on. These are all glued. So these are just known to crack. So we've been gluing them down for a while, but we do not put any screws in them. In the wintertime now, especially, you get some frost sitting on top here. Well, this whole thing's going to be cold, and it's going to be cold on the inside of this. So now the sun comes up, and it's going to evaporate this frost off, or, it'll evaporate it off. On the inside, it can't evaporate it off, so what happens is it'll drool down the side of the lens, and it can start rotting out either the roof deck, or in this case, it could rot out the curb. So I don't want any moisture getting in there. I can't prevent it, though. So this is an intake. This is an exhaust fan. So when the sun comes up and it evaporates this off, it kicks on that solar fan. Now that fan is, obviously it's an exhaust, so it's pulling the air from here, and I put a little piece of ductwork in there. It's inside the roof. So it goes into that ductwork, and it pulls it up, and it goes over. There's an inner lens. So when you step in the shower, that lens you see, it's not this one, there's another one. So you get that channel, that hollow. So it'll go up in between the two lenses, come back down, and it'll keep constant air going through there to keep it dry. So that's the whole point of that. And then if you don't, like I said, with that condensation, when it weeps down there, that's known as dry rot. It's just you can't fix it except get ventilation in there. That's the fix for it. But if that cap comes off, you can take that plumbing cap and put it right on here, because this is a hollow channel and it will leak in the coach. It's either that or put some tape on it or something. But if that pops off, you can take any one of these other plumbing ones and replace it to make sure the water stays out of there. So again, everything is all heat welded in here. There's all heat welded right all in there. Then you see we got the stands in the back of this air conditioner. We got another piece of counter flash up front or up there. And then we made a special curb for this antenna. Now, all the caulking, we've got 2 strikes of caulking on here. So when we put the gutters on, these are glued on as well. We don't use butyl. So when we put them on, see if I pop this loose. When we put these on, the caulking's going to pop up, and when it does, we strike it down. Once that cures, we go over it with another strike. When that strike cures, then we go over it with a second strike. So the reason why I do that is if you've ever operated a caulking gun, you'll hear it pop or crackle. And when it pops and crackles, that means you just injected an air bubble. These coaches, they rack and twist and flex quite a bit, and I don't want that single layer. I don't want it to breach, and we have a tiny little hole in there from an air bubble that breached, and now we got leaks. So what are the chances of having one air bubble land on top of another? Probably slim to none. So that's why I do the 2. And then the other thing I do, see if I can get this free. You can see that little groove? It snaps into that track. I'll show you that here in a minute. But all these screws are all, they got little grommets around them. I make sure there's caulking all around all these screws. See? I want to make sure there's caulking on there. So you can see that little track. It's going to snap in like this. And what I like about it is it keeps a lot of that water out. So the other ones they just actually slide in. I'll get a piece over here. I'll show you in a minute. But So again, this is a commercial, real easy to maintain. Now the warranty on this is a 20-year system. That means this roof material right here, this is warranty for 20 years. They don't know who's installing it, so they will not extend a labor or any sort of warranty like that. So on your coaches, the ones that come out of the factory, they may say, hey, you've got a 10-year warranty, you've got a 12-year warranty. That's the material, but they're not warrantying all of the protrusions that come out to make sure they're sealed, and that's where you're going to get all your leaks. Very rare that the actual membrane is going to fail so bad that it'll leak through the membrane. That's almost unheard of. 99% of the time, you're going to get it coming around your vent, because the way they do them is they just put the vent down and slobber it without self-leveling. They just want you to put more on, that type mentality. And they're exploiting people's ignorance to roof systems. That's not the way they go together, not a flat roof. You have to have it done like this with a curb, and you have to have it flashed out. So this, like I said, this system here being a 20-year system, the material, our warranty, we extend a courtesy warranty. We want to see it come back in like 60 days if we can at max. So because these things, I want it to move. It's going to rack, it's going to twist, it's going to flex. And I want to see if there's any issues with it. If I get another Fuzion in here, it's going to rack and twist and flex differently than this one. And I want to make sure we've addressed all that, and if there's any corners that rack more than what the caulking will allow, I want to make sure we get that corrected. So if we do show the customer how to go over this and inspect it and make sure, and again, we leave them with product just in case they need it. After that, you come back once a year. So when you come back this December, so his warranty is going to be, we'll say he comes back in February or so, then his warranty will run from February 24 to February 25, and then he comes back in 25, it'll be from February 25 to 26, and you get the idea. Every year we renew it, so we want to see it. What I don't want to have happen is something simple that could be addressed and it turns into a hot mess because it was never inspected and it was just the simplest thing you could have fixed, right? And then the customer may say, hey, I got all these problems. And you go, why didn't you bring it in? We could have corrected that a long time ago. Now it's a hot mess. And if that being the case, then I have to charge the customer to fix it all. And I don't want to have to do all that. So that's why I just want to see them come back. These are maintenance hogs. You got to understand that. There's nothing that's ever going to last forever with no attention given to it at all, even on a commercial level. So when you do a commercial roof, once you get it installed, you usually go back within 30 days, you go back and inspect it. And then after that, because again, it's fresh, you want to make sure everything's acclimated, that it's sitting right and so forth. And then you go every year. That's how you maintain a roof. So don't just assume. Now everything I use is all commercial grade, but still, it's not a good idea to run around without a spare tire or a jack in your car, right? These are all things you got to keep in mind. So some of the things, obviously, we can't warranty. I don't warranty the skylight lenses. I can't warranty the fans, any of that stuff. We just warranty that it's all the components that we heat welded and put together, that those aren't going to fail and those aren't going to leak. So then the other thing we did is we went along and checked all the caulking along the top. I recommend the customer go around and do the whole thing as well. And also you can see that looks kind of glossy. We put a new strike on there because it looked like it was vulnerable. We opened up the slide outs and there's a piece of tape in here, and we checked all the tape that they used to make sure that was watertight on all the slides. We had them open just a little while ago, but it obviously makes it easier to walk around when and do the video with the catwalk. So that's about the gist of it. Let me show you this though. This is what I was talking about. This is what they normally use for their insert trim for the gutter. And this, you can see it just sits in there, and the water can still get down inside that little track. Where this one, it locks it out because it's got the groove. So it keeps all that water out. And that's what I want to try to do, is keep as much water out of this thing as I possibly can. So the other thing we did is I put a gutter on the back. This had a piece of mold, and it was basically a corner mold that come up. That's how they terminated the roof. But we brought it over and put the gutter on the back here. So now when the water does roll off and we got spouts on there, let's get it away from the coach. One around the lights. So typically we want to check things from the floor here up. I hate for someone to come back, and I've had this, and this is why we do it, is customer comes back and says, hey, I got a leak. And it was never a leak from the roof. It was, probably a leak from the light, or it was someplace else. So now we just as a courtesy, we go around and check all that. So if you see anything, it's not going to be from here up, it's going to be from down there. But I still would recommend, like, these windows probably need to be sealed. They have a little foam gasket inside there, and we usually recommend those. Don't assume that they won't leak or they won't fail, because they will. They'll tend to dry out. We had, there's another coach, I think it was a Viper. It may be on there. It was a big coach. But one of the window stickers on that thing said to change these window gaskets on these type windows every 2 years. That's a lot of work if you think you're going to pull the window out. You don't have to do that. You can just go around and seal them up. So you can use a better caulking. If you have those, one of the best caulks that I've used that work on here well is called Big Stretch. And it's made by Sashco. And it comes out almost like marshmallow. It's really good, and it's also water cleanup. So that's what the other thing I like about it. So, because if you try to take a regular caulking, boy, that's a lot to fill in. If you look at how thick that window is and how deep it is, you're going to burn up tube after tube. But the Big Stretch, it's for the lack of a better word, it's fluffier, right? It's like marshmallow, but it seals well. So, and like I said, all this, all heat welded, all heat welded, all heat welded. So, we're, like I said, we're done. We appreciate it. If you like the video, give it a like. And then other people can, I guess from the algorithms, they can find it better. I'm not a YouTuber, not even a electronics or a device type person. So that's why these videos, I just walk around with a camera. Some people say I make them seasick. I'm just trying to get the meat and potatoes out here so the customer can see all the work we did and how it all come together in that aspect of it, because everybody has questions. What'd you find? What was under there? So on and so forth. So other than that, we appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one. Care package. Right. So in our care package, we have caulking, we got primer, we have got 2 patches. Those are heat patches. We got a patch, peel and stick patch. We got a checker tool. We've got a magnet. And the rest of this is just pens, keychains, brush, nozzle. Okay, so if we have a hole in the roof, it will simulate a hole. You can do hole simulations. We say we got a hole there. Here's your tree branch come through and you're like, oh man, I got a hole in my roof, it's leaking. So what you want to do? And it's raining out. Right now it's raining. You're like, crap, I gotta stop that leak. You want to get in there, and if you can't get that nozzle in there, don't worry about it. Make it a little bigger. What you're trying to do, you need to get up underneath the roofing, like this. This is what we need to do, get up underneath the roofing. Then you're going to take and you're going to put this up inside there, and you're going to squeeze, 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 squeeze. Hopefully this thing is plugged up. There it goes. You squeeze, squeeze. You want to try and get up underneath this part too. Squeeze up underneath there. Get some more underneath there. Well, we are getting this thing all boogered up. Then what we're going to do, you're going to push it together. See how it oozes out? That's sealed. You're done. This is a moisture cured product. So what? It's a hot mess. Looks terrible. Who cares? Keep the water out. So now, the next day, we're going to go up there, and that's going to be cured looking like that. So we're going to take a knife, and you just shave it down. Just shave it down with a knife. I'm just going to obviously wipe this off. Now you say, hey, I want something a little better than that. So what we're going to do is get some cleaner. This is a terrible rag. You got another one. You got one on you? Oh, get a rag, get a rag, get a rag, get a rag, get a rag. Hey, what are you doing? What are you going to talk about, man? No, just leave it alone. Oh, leave it alone right now. We're recording now? Are we on? Yes, sir. Okay. Alright, so now we cleaned it off with a knife. I just washed that off because it's still wet. Take that off. So now we got a patch. This is a peel and stick patch. We're going to take that, we're going to center it over there. Just take a pen and go around like this. I like to kind of put a dash like that so I know who's where, what, and where, and how. So now there's what I got. So in the package we got primer. we also have a brush. You're going to take that, you're going to go all inside the square. You're also going to go outside this square about 3/8 of an inch. Outside about 3/8 of an inch or so. Once you get that, there's a film on the back. You peel the film, now you know which side you are, see, that's because there's your marks. And you peel that film back. Get my fingers in there to get the film off of this thing. This is just a regular roof tape. That's all it is. We put them in all the care packages. Get that daggone thing off of there. Probably need some fingernails. Probably help. Come on. There it is. Okay. There it is. Now you got the film. You take that film. So now we're going to line it back up with this. We already got the primer under there. You just peel the film back, and as you do, you just rub it down like this. Sometimes that film will get a little stuck in there. This is just a butyl. You just kind of try to keep it as even as you can and flat as you can. Boom, you're done. There it is. So now, out here, this is where your primer is. You put the primer on there. You got primer there, and now you're going to put primer here. You want to prime all this area with your brush. Prime all that. Then you're going to come back. Once you get it all primed, then you're going to put a little bit of caulking on it, just like this. That's simple. If it doesn't all sit in there, you can always take your finger and go around it if you want. We're trying to obviously stop a leak and make one of. There's going to be a little more permanent of a patch than just that plug that we did when it was raining. So now that we get that all done, what the whole purpose of it is this part here. This part underneath here, that's a butyl. When the sun hits that, if you didn't have the caulking on there, it will cause it to release and curl up just like I'm doing here. And it'll start coming loose. That's why you need the primer. That's why when you prime it, you're going to prime on top of this because nothing will stick to it. Nothing, the caulking will not stick to this patch and it won't stick to the roof unless you use the primer. That's how you do a patch. Ta-da! All done.